Chapter 21 Father. I hate you. There is not much background information about Princess Milia of Morningstar in the game. Lear didn't know much. He only knew that his engagement was replaced by Eric's, and after Miria was rescued, she never appeared in the player's sight again. Later, Milia appeared as the Princess of Morningstar in the Kingdom of Kasha, southeast of the Kingdom of Briefville, that is the base camp of the arcane law, which is the plot later on. As for what happened to Milia before this, no one knows. As they escorted the queen out of the mansion and arrived at a secluded garden, the queen suddenly stopped. The beautiful silver-haired woman turned around and looked at Lear with the same blue eyes as Miria's. "Actually, I'm very curious," she said quietly. "In the fate I saw, you lost to Eric and also lost Miria. But now fate has changed." Lear was standing in front of the queen. When he heard this, he was slightly stunned, and then his expression became a little strange. "Something happened to you. Although I don't know what it is, since your fate has been changed, I hope you can protect Milia well in the future." The queen continued, "After all, Milia and you are the same kind of people. We are all heretics and are not accepted by gold." She looked at Lear dimly and said the last sentence. Before Lear could react, the queen turned and left. Lear remained silent for a long time, watching the queen disappear. What does the queen mean? Are we all heretics? Milia will awaken the law of the Morningstar in the future, which can indeed be considered heresy. The queen is Milia's mother. If both of them are believers in the law of the Morningstar, there is nothing wrong with saying this, but the queen's words were obviously not just about herself and Milia. Lear could clearly feel that the word "we" also included him. Does the queen know that she has communicated with alien gods? Lear's expression was uncertain, and he remembered a legal profession under the laws of Chinching in his previous life. Astrologer. This profession has the ability to predict the future. He sighed helplessly. If the queen really knew his secret, he could only hope that she would not tell anyone else, although he felt that given the queen's attitude just now, she would not tell the secret. After all, they are all heretics. The queen said so herself. Back to Milia's bedroom, the girl was curled up in bed, still so beautiful, but the temperament is different from before. There was no longer that obvious feeling of timidity, but Lear could still feel the other person's body tremble slightly when he walked into the room. "What did you and Her Majesty the Queen talk about just now?" Lear couldn't help asking. Milia raised her head, a little nervous, but thinking of her mother's attitude just now, she seemed to have found the courage. "I won't tell you." "Are you sure?" Lear leaned forward and gently lifted the girl's chin. What do you want to do?" "Your mother asked you to treat me well." Milia became nervous. "Yes, Her Majesty the Queen asked me to treat you well, but you are my wife, and such behavior between husband and wife should be normal." Lear moved closer. The shyness emotional fluctuation value of the carrier of the Chinching law source material has reached 93%, and you have gained 1% of the Chinching law affinity. The system panel popped up, and combined with the blood donating ceremony just now, Lear's affinity with the law of the Morningstar has reached 10%, which can be said to be very fast. Your affinity with the law of the Morningstar has reached 10%, you gain intelligence +3, mysticism +7, in an instant. Lear felt his mind became much clearer. He smiled. Although he could no longer bully Milia as recklessly as before due to the queen's restrictions, it seemed not bad to gain affinity with the law of Morningstar in this way. Or rather, it is more exciting. Looking at Milia's shy appearance, Lear felt that it was not bad to have such a little wife. "One day I will make you tell me willingly," he said, then put on his coat and turned away. Arcane Academy, Dean's office. Duke Norton looked at Tivany standing beside him with an angry look on his face. "Erwin, shouldn't you explain it to me? Why did Divine give Eric that potion? Now Eric's potential has been completely overdrawn. His level has also dropped to that of a beginner mage." The man sitting in the dean's seat adjusted his glasses, put down the newspaper in his hand, and said lightly, "Pay attention to your identity, Vicente. Don't forget who brought you here. Who supported you to become the Duke." Duke Norton's momentum stagnated, and his anger had nowhere to be released because of the man named Elvin. "Vicente, I'm sorry about what happened to Eric. The potential breakthrough potion was indeed given to him by Divine, but it was only used to save Eric's life in a critical moment. Wasn't it Eric's own fault for using the potion in a duel? Divini didn't force Eric to use the potion. It was Eric who made the choice." Erwin said this lightly, while Divine pretended to look aggrieved. 3 days ago, when Eric used the potion in the arena, she knew it was bad. Although she gave Eric the potion, she also planned to let Eric drink the potion and beat up Lear if something unexpected happened during the duel, but it was indeed as her father Erwin said, it was Eric's own choice to drink the potion. The most she did not tell him that the side effects of the potion would be so serious, but then again, Divine didn't expect the side effects of the potential breakthrough potion to be so serious. Duke Norton gritted his teeth, unable to refute Erwin's words. He also could not question the other party's identity, so he could only leave the dean's office angrily. It was not until Duke Norton left that Tivany regained her disdainful expression. Humph, really, you used the potion and still got defeated by Lear, and you still have the nerve to blame me. Erwin picked up the newspaper on the table again and did not comment on his daughter's complaint. He suddenly asked, did Lear really defeat Eric with swordplay, Divine? Yes, father, I really don't know how Lear did it. He never told me. It's really too much. Tivany replied angrily. Oh, right, there are also Lear's 2 spells, which he created himself. One can be immune to the intermediate firestorm, and the other is an arcane cannon with powerful destructive power. He didn't tell me these. Listening to what Divine said, Erwin showed a hint of interest on his face. He was silent for a while, then asked, I heard that you had some conflicts with Lear recently? It wasn't me who had a conflict with him. It was he who didn't abide by the agreement between us and loudly criticized me. Tivany got angry again when she thought of how Lear had criticized her in public before. Erwin shrugged helplessly. She knew exactly what kind of person her daughter was. He has doted on Tivany since she was a child, which made Tivany develop a self-centered personality. This is not good, but Erwin has never thought about correcting anything. As an extraordinary wizard, he felt that his daughter could be willful, and this was the confidence brought by her strength, but this time, Erwin decided to let his daughter suffer a little. Tivany, go and apologize to Lear. What? Tivany was stunned for a moment, and her tone became higher. I said, go and apologize to Lear, why? Before Erwin could finish his words, Tivany retorted excitedly, with a hint of grievance in her tone. Tivany, I've also seen how Lear treats you. He has always cared about you, but you don't care much about him. You have to know that care is mutual. Only when you respect others will others respect you. Alvin's tone became a little serious. Divine stood there blankly. It was the first time she felt her father speaking to her so seriously, and the anger in her heart was diluted a lot. She remembered what Lear had said to accuse her before and felt so wronged. After a long silence, Divine said with red eyes, even my father said this to me. Tivany. Erwin opened his mouth, and looking at his daughter's aggrieved look, he wondered if he had really gone too far. Without waiting for Erwin to speak, Divine turned around and ran out with tears in her eyes, Father. I hate you. Looking at Divine's back as she ran away, Alvin sighed helplessly. He knew his daughter well and believed that her little temper would get better after a while. He paid no attention to it, his eyes returning to the newspaper in his hand. Arcane in War, a dual law professional. It's incredible. If I can study it, can I break through the shackles of the extraordinary and reach the Holy Land? Erwin muttered to himself, with a gleam in his eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 22. I feel like I was discovered stealing someone. The sky gradually darkened under the cover of darkness, but the morning star lit up in the darkness, embellishing the starry sky with a beautiful picture. After Lear finished his dinner, he called Eno to his bedroom. Milia's blood-giving ritual failed, and now he can only choose other targets. As expected, the little maid was targeted by him. After all, he was someone close to him, so he felt more at ease turning Eno into a believer of blood. Eno followed Lear, walking in the corridor on the 3rd floor, his expression shy and excited. What could Lear do by calling her to his bedroom late at night? Eno had been waiting for this day for a long time. After all, a noble's personal maid often had the duty of warming the bed for her master. A young and beautiful girl like Eno would have been eaten up long ago in other noble families, but Lear never touches her. At one point, Eno felt that Lear looked down on her because of her humble background, and she was sad about it for a while. Lear didn't know what the little maid was thinking, and the two of them had already arrived in the bedroom. After closing the door, Lear looked at Eno. Although the little maid was not as beautiful as the princess, she was still a beauty. He coughed lightly, walked over to Eno, and stroked the maid's hair gently. The little maid's body trembled slightly, she closed her eyes shyly, and her cheeks turned red. Eno, do you want to become a professional? Lear's voice sounded in the maid's ears. Ugh. Eno, who was ready to be favored by Lear, became noticeably stiff when he heard this. She slowly opened her eyes, with a hint of unconfidence in her eyes. "Master, is this what you called me to talk about? Is there any problem?" Lear frowned. The little maid felt bad after getting the response, and she was ashamed of her dirty thoughts. Seeing Eno's increasingly red face, Lear quickly reacted and understood the little maid's thoughts. After traveling through time for so many days, he knew Eno's feelings for him. It was obvious what Eno would think when he called her into the room alone in the middle of the night. He was only thinking about finding a quiet place to perform the blood donating ceremony and completely forgot about this. Lear was a little embarrassed. What should he do now? Following Eno's thoughts, he transformed into an evil noble who bullied the little maid? But Milia was in the next room. After a long silence, Lear finally decided to complete the blood donating ceremony first. "Well, Eno, I have a way that can allow you to awaken the law and become a professional. Do you want to become a professional?" Lear said softly, pretending to be calm. Eno also calmed down at this moment, with a hint of shyness in his eyes. "As long as the young master wants it, Eno can do it." The little maid nodded seriously. "Even if the alien I awakened you to came from an alien god? If it is discovered, the Golden Church will, I don't care." Eno interrupted Lear, looked at Lear, and said firmly, "As long as the young master wants me to do it, Eno will not refuse." Lear was moved by Eno's attitude. Who wouldn't want a little maid who trusted him completely? He smiled, stretched out his hands and hugged Eno in his arms. "Now that you've said that, there's no chance to regret it." Without waiting for Eno to answer, he lowered his head and bit the little maid's lips. Eno's eyes widened, but soon his body went limp, and a bright red ritual light lit up the room. Late at night, Milia buried her whole body in the quilt. The panting sound coming from the next room made her teeth itch with anger. Late in the night, she knew what the noise was about without having to think about it. She also knew who lived in the bedroom next door. It was only her and Lear on the third floor. Disgusting. Shameless. Pervert. Milia kept cursing, feeling annoyed in her heart. She was obviously Lear's fiancée, and Lear treated her like that, but he went to find another woman at night. For a moment, Milia was a little insecure about her appearance. The panting sound continued until the early morning. Milia stared with dark circles under her eyes and couldn't fall asleep. The next day, Lear woke up satisfied. Eno lay in his arms with a beautiful smile on her face. He finally couldn't resist the temptation. After completing the blood-giving ceremony, he ate the little maid clean. Holding the maid's soft body, he opened the system panel. "You have completed the first stage of the mission Blood's Revival. You have obtained 5 experience points, the basic Blood Apostle skills Blood Resonance, and Life-Binding Shackles. You taught a Blood Hunter the Law of Blood. You have obtained the Blood Hunter Professional Skill Blood Mark, the second stage of the Blood Revival. Find other Blood Sect believers in the Royal City. Mission Reward, 50,000 experience points. Blood Prisoner Mask, Failure Penalty, Curse of the Lord of Blood, Task Time. Limit, 30 days." The rewarded skill icon appeared in the skill bar, and detailed information about the skill also appeared in Lear's mind. I have to say that the skills given by the Lord of Blood are quite good. Or Blood Resonance can give Lear the power to control blood for a short period of time, and can even allow him to forcibly control the blood in the bodies of professionals with lower levels than himself. As for the Life-Binding Shackles, a binding skill, it can continuously devour the target's physical strength. There is also the blood mark of the Blood Hunter. After spreading the profession of the blood law, the Blood Apostle can obtain some of the abilities of other blood law professions. Blood mark means that you can mark the target and sense the target's position. The farther the distance, the blurrier the perception, and it can increase the damage you can cause to the marked target. Lear is looking forward to what abilities the Blood Apostle class will have when it is upgraded to the later stages. While he was checking his skills, Eno let out a moan in her sleep. The little maid slowly opened her eyes, and when she saw Lear's face, she shyly shrank into Lear's arms. "Okay, I'm about to get up. Do you want to rest for a while? I'll let other maids do today's work." Lear patted Eno's smooth back. No need. I'll just work on my own." Eno raised his head with shyness in his eyes. "Is it okay?" Lear asked with concern. He bullied the little maid severely last night and only stopped when she begged for mercy. "It's okay, I feel a lot stronger and more powerful." Eno shook his head. Lear looked at the little maid's condition. She didn't seem to be trying to be brave. Was this the power of the blood law? He didn't say anything more. Eno helped Lear put on his clothes, changed his clothes himself, and walked out of the bedroom together. As soon as he walked out the door, Lear saw Milia walking towards him with a haggard face not far away in the corridor. When Milia saw Lear and Eno, her face turned red and she glared at Lear fiercely, obscene. After saying that, Milia quickly returned to the room. Lear and Eno stood there in an awkward atmosphere. They looked at each other, feeling as if they had been caught stealing someone away. It is normal for upper-class nobles to have multiple women, and the legal wife usually won't care, but you cannot have an affair in front of the legal wife. This is very humiliating. Of course, there are also some noble ladies who like this kind of tune, and will take the initiative to help their men find women, or even multiple women. But Milia is obviously not such a person. Lear shook his head and decided to find some time to communicate with Milia. After all, she was his fiancée. In the next few days, Lear had some free time and began to reorganize the servants in the Duke's mansion. Milia stayed in the Duke's palace, but she was no longer a prisoner. It was just that the Queen did not want others to find out that Milia was here. So Milia still can't leave, but he couldn't let Milia stay in the bedroom all the time. So Lear instructed the servants in the house. All the unimportant servants were dismissed, leaving only the maids who could meet the daily cleaning needs of the Duke's mansion, and he converted all of them into believers of the blood law, so that he could control the loyalty of these maids. Of course, this time the believers were not converted in the same way as Eno. He simply mixed his own blood into the maids' food, and then used the skills of the blood-confessing ceremony on the maids, and finally let Eno lead them. Lear did not grant these maids the profession of law, but simply helped them awaken the law of blood and improve their physical fitness slightly. All these things were done without the maid's knowledge. End of this chapter. Chapter 23. Father, why are you taking off your pants? The evening in the royal city of Brafel was a little chilly. The sun disappeared in the clouds, and tired workers could be seen walking hurriedly on the streets after work. Lear sat on a bench, wearing a coat and a tall hat, and covering his face with a newspaper. He is searching for other blood cult followers hiding in the royal city. 5 days had passed since the second ring of the mission was triggered. He had visited almost the entire royal city, but he still had no clue about the other blood cult believers hiding in the royal city. There are many places where players are born in the game, except for the Rhodes Empire, which has no birthplace. The three kingdoms under it all have cities where many players are born. In his previous life, Lear was not a player of the kingdom of Brafel, so he was not very familiar with the situation in the royal city of Brafel. His eyes swept through the crowd on the street and he sighed helplessly. If pagans were so easy to find, they would have been wiped out by the Golden Church long ago. He is just a newly appointed cult leader, and the believers don't come to him themselves, but he is asked to dig himself. Isn't this a bit unreasonable? He stood up and prepared to go home to have a good meal and come out again in the evening. It is common sense that pagan activities are more frequent late at night. Just as he closed the newspaper and was about to leave, a luxurious carriage slowly drove up from a distance. The carriage was engraved with the golden tree emblem of the Golden Church. When it passed by Lear saw a cold face behind the slightly lifted curtain. Discover the golden law source material carrier causes a certain degree of negative emotional fluctuations in the carrier of the law source, and can gain corresponding law affinity. Looking at the system panel that suddenly popped up in front of him, Lear fell silent. This was the second person he saw who could activate the golden finger. The previous one was Milia, who carried the law of Morningstar, and he also knew this person, the saint of the Golden Church, Ophanina Adrian. The Golden Church's carriage moved forward slowly, and everyone along the way tactfully gave way. Wufangina looked at the information in her hand with a curious expression on her face. Emily, do you think there is really someone in this world who can gain the favor of the two major laws at the same time? The young man in armor was stunned for a moment before he said, Your Highness, are you talking about the heir of the Stuart family? Ophanina nodded. If it's the laws of arcane and war, then maybe it's possible, but the believers of the golden law will never believe in a second law. The young man named Maury said seriously, as if he was guaranteeing his loyalty. Ophelia chuckled and did not comment on Maury's words. She looked out the window and saw a tall building located in a clean neighborhood without any trace of filth. This is the Golden Church branch in the royal city of Brafel. Led by the guards, the group slowly walked into the cathedral. Not far away, Lear watched this scene and raised his eyebrows. When he saw Ophanina, his first thought was to arrest her like he did to Milia and lock her up at home. This is the second source carrier that can improve the affinity of the law. Although it is the golden law that he doesn't like very much, he can also obtain 100 additional attribute points by maxing out the affinity of the golden law. It's like getting 100 levels for free, but Lear quickly put this idea to rest. Ophanina is different from Milia. She is a real strong person who has reached a high level. He cannot defeat her. Moreover, once the Golden Saint disappears, the Golden Church will definitely conduct a thorough investigation, and his situation will be very dangerous at that time unless there is something that can isolate the power of the law. Lear touched his chin for a long time, then suddenly slapped himself. What on earth was he thinking? Why did he want to arrest people at every turn? He acted like a pervert stalking him. Moreover, Milia's issue was just resolved not long ago, and now another time bomb is caught. Isn't this too long-lived? Don't be blinded by the golden finger. Lear calmed down, stopped having wild thoughts, and did not stay in the Golden Cathedral any longer. He went straight home. When they got home, Eno had already prepared dinner and Milia had dinner with him. During this period, his relationship with Milia eased a lot, and Milia's attitude towards him became more ambiguous. After all, they were still engaged. Eno also became a close friend with Milia, and the relationship between girls warmed up quickly. After dinner, Lear was about to leave the living room. When he was about to leave, Milia suddenly asked with a blush on her cheeks, "Have you been busy lately? Are you concerned about me?" Lear smiled. Milia's face turned even redder and she glared at Lear. He walked up to Milia and gently kissed the little princess on the cheek while she was off guard. Such an action naturally caused Milia to feel shy, and the affinity of the Chinching law increased again. Looking at Milia, although she looked shy, she didn't show much resistance. This was a good development. The girl is gradually adapting to the identity of a wife. I'll take some time to accompany you these days. Lear patted Milia's little head. He knew that Milia felt a little lonely in the Duke's mansion. Although she had Eno with her, she could only walk around the Duke's mansion. I really don't know what the Queen said to her to make Milia willing to stay here. Who wants you to accompany me? Milia said stubbornly. Lear did not burst the girl's self-esteem, but smiled, took his coat and turned away. After walking out of the door, I will look for the traces of the blood believers again tonight. It will be 5 consecutive days. According to the rule of work 5 days and rest 2 days, I should rest for a few days. Even though we have traveled through time, we cannot still work 996 and have no human rights. The royal city at night is not as prosperous as it is during the day, but you can still see some shops with lights on, most of which are bars or places with street girls. For 5 days, Lear focused on observing the slums and citizen areas, and did not search the aristocratic areas. There are many professionals and members of the legal sect in the aristocratic district. If one is not extremely bold, it is hard to imagine that there would be a heretical sect hiding in the aristocratic district. Of course, this is not absolute. If a noble takes the initiative to communicate with the outer gods, it may not be the case, such as himself. Or with a self-deprecating smile, Lear walked forward into the night. Unknowingly, he came to the place where he saw Ophelia during the day. The lights were still on in the Golden Cathedral. Why did Ophanina come to the Golden Church branch in Brayfield? He pondered, remembering that he had seen in the background information on the official website that the saint came to Brayfield to eradicate paganism. Lee's eyes suddenly widened. After all this time, you are here to mess with yourself? He was somewhat speechless, looking at the brightly lit cathedral, and after thinking for a moment, he slowly reached up. Now that we already know that Saint Ophanina is here to eradicate paganism, it is important to know ourselves and our enemy, and if the other party finds the hidden blood cult believers, he can also complete the mission of the Lord of Blood. As for what will happen to the followers of the blood cult after Ufangina finds them, Lear could only hope that those believers could be stronger and not be killed by the saint. Otherwise, apart from the maids in the mansion, who have little fighting ability, he would be left alone. Choosing a secluded fence, Lear flipped over and entered the interior of the cathedral. The backyard of the church was very dark, with only a few oil lamps hanging on the walls. There were no people around, as the nuns and believers had already gone to rest at this time. Lear walked along the wall. He remembered that he had been to the Golden Church once. Distinguished guests would be accommodated in the guest rooms on the west side. As he walked along the road, he suddenly heard a sound coming from a small room not far away. "Father, why are you taking off your pants?" This was a childish boy's voice. "Child, this is necessary to perform the sacred golden gift." Another voice sounded. Lear stood there in a daze. End of this chapter. Chapter 24. The shameful and angry Golden Saint. Lear knew that the upper-class nobles had decadent private lives, but he never expected that even the priests of the Golden Church had such unique tastes. In his previous life, he had heard that the priests and bishops of the Golden See like little boys, but he just thought it was a joke at that time. After all, the Golden Church is sacred and solemn in the public's impression, but the reality is often far from what it seems. Lear only took one look and felt that his eyes were hit hard. He opened the door swiftly, walked behind the priest, and used a magical shock to knock both the priest and the little boy unconscious. Now that we have seen it, we can't just pretend that nothing happened. As for how to deal with the priest and the little boy, it was already a kindness on his part that he gave the saint a hint before leaving. He was not a saint, and he did not think he could save anyone. Lear shook his head and turned to the VIP guest rooms on the west side. In the VIP guest room, Wolfangina was sitting on the bed in her dress, still holding the document she had obtained during the day. It contained Lear's detailed information. In addition to eradicating the heretical sects that had fled from the Rhodes Empire, she also had another mission when she came to Briefville, which was to contact the heir of Stuart. During the day, Maury said that believers of the Golden Rule would not believe in the second law, which is correct, but it is not just about gold. The same is true for arcane and war. No one has ever been able to gain favor from both laws at the same time. After all, there is a God behind every law, and no God is willing to share his believers. What an interesting man. Once we have cleared out the heretics of the corrupt sect, we can go get to know him. Afanina smiled. She put down the documents in her hand and was about to take a break when she suddenly heard the sound of a branch breaking outside the window. Who is it? Ophelia frowned instantly. She quickly walked to the window, and her female intuition told her that something was wrong. Outside the window, Lear looked at the broken branches under his feet and felt a little unwell. Looking at Afanina looking down from the second-floor window, he felt even worse. Second floor, you can hear it from such a distance? Who are you? A light flashed from Afanina's right hand, illuminating the situation below. I saw a figure in a black coat and a tall hat sneaking against the wall. Lear sighed. Now that he had been discovered, he could only run away. He quickly took out the Night Rose from the storage ring, activated the Night Rose's special skill, and turned the sword blade invisible. As long as he starts the Aslan Royal Swordsmanship to transform the attribute into dexterity, he will leave, confident that Afanina cannot stop him. Are you a heretic from a corrupt sect? Seeing that the Black Shadow hadn't spoken, Ophelia became even more suspicious. I had not publicized my arrival in Brayfield, nor had I revealed my identity when I entered the city during the day. Who would eavesdrop in the middle of the night? Only corrupt pagans who have fled here from the Empire. Damned pagan, I haven't even gone to look for you yet, and you dare to come to my door? Afanina raised her eyebrows. Lear below was stunned for a moment after hearing what Ophelia said. Corruption cult? Not blood cult. He instantly realized that he had made a mistake and that the other party was not here to cause trouble for him at all. An embarrassed expression appeared on the face under the tall hat, and Lear turned around and was about to run. Don't even think about running. Afanina snorted coldly, and an invisible light wave locked onto Lear's body. Instantly, Lear felt his body grow heavy. One of Prayer's signature skills, Repent, greatly weakens the target's basic attributes. Lear took a look at his character panel and found that all his attributes had dropped by at least 50%. Damn, I almost forgot that the Golden Church's praying men have such an impotent skill. The class oppression of high-level professionals is simply impossible for ordinary mid-level professionals to resist. Lear was a little panicked. He immediately activated Aslan's royal swordsmanship, maxed out his agility, and ran a long way in an instant. Seeing this, Afanina jumped out of the window, swinging her iron scepter, and chased after him without thinking. The two of them were in front and one behind, and the distance between them was not much. The attribute weakening of repentance was still too serious. Lear gritted his teeth and looked at Ophelia, who was chasing him relentlessly. Feeling anxious, Saint Afanina also has another title. She is called the Daughter of the Golden Law. Although she is a support-type prayer practitioner, she also has the combat-type judge skills. She can fight and heal, and can be said to be all-round with no blind spots. With his current strength, he is no match for the opponent. Even if he wants to escape, he needs to have enough mana. Aslan Royal Swordsmanship can only last for 100 seconds, which is not enough time. What's more, he is now attacked by impotence. Just when Lear was at a loss, he suddenly remembered the eye-catching room he had just seen, and his eyes lit up. Your Highness, I am not the corrupt pagan you want to eliminate. If you chase me again, I guarantee you will see the sight of hell. Lear turned around and shouted to Ophelia. Humph. Do you think I will listen to your nonsense? Damn heretic, you should be the one going to hell. Ophelia didn't take Lear's words to heart at all. A mid-level professional, not worth mentioning. Lear curled his lips and said, You asked for this. He ran straight to the priest's room and broke the wooden door when he reached it. Seeing this scene, Afanina in the back smiled. This pagan must have panicked and actually ran into the room. Isn't this courting death? Immediately, she chased after him. As soon as she entered the room, Afanina smelled a strange smell. In the middle of the room, a little boy and the priest were lying on the bed in disheveled. At this moment, the priest seemed to be awakened and opened his eyes dazedly. Strange, how could I fall asleep? He glanced at the boy who seemed to be asleep on the bed, and didn't feel anything unusual. Maybe he was a little tired, the priest nodded, ready to continue his hobby. His evil smile reappeared on his face. Child, the gift of gold has not ended yet, how can you sleep? As he said this, he reached out and tried to tear off the little boy's clothes. At this moment, Lear patted the priest on the shoulder and said, Father, are you going to do something that blasphemes the golden law in front of us? The priest was startled and jumped off the bed. He turned around and saw Ophelia with an unbelievable look on her face and a man wrapped tightly. Your Highness, the Saint. After a long while, the priest reacted and said tremblingly. Ophelia came back to her senses and her cheeks turned red, not sure whether she was angry or embarrassed. This is the Cathedral of the Golden Rule. How could anyone dare to do such a thing? How is it? Is this a scene from hell? Lear laughed, and without waiting for Ophelia to answer, he converted all his attributes into strength. The night rose directly pierced the wall, creating a big hole, and then ran out quickly. Ophelia looked at Lear, who was running away, then glanced at the ragged priest and the trembling boy, and finally gritted her teeth, swung the scepter and hit the priest hard. How could a believer of gold have a scum like you? How dare you do such a filthy thing in the sacred golden cathedral? You are a blasphemer who deserves to go to hell. Die! Die! She continued to vent her anger, and her shame made her forget about Lear's escape. The shrill screams soon attracted other people in the cathedral. The Golden Bishop and Guard Mori were the first to arrive at the scene. They were dumbfounded when they saw the scene before them. The Golden Bishop looked at the priest, who was no longer in human form, feeling infinite sorrow in his heart. He had clearly told the saint that she would stay for a few days and try to restrain herself, so why did she still commit the crime against the wind? Bishop Gas, I hope you can give me a reasonable explanation. After venting her anger, Ophelia turned to look at the bishop beside her. Your Highness, I really don't know anything about Father Colin. You know, I am a loyal golden believer and there is no way I would allow such blasphemous things. Bishop Gas immediately distanced himself from the matter. Ophelia gritted her teeth. It's better this way. Lear no longer knew what had happened in the Golden Cathedral. He had already escaped from the church and came to an empty alley. A prompt on the system panel popped up in front of him. The anger and shame emotional fluctuation values of the Golden Law Source Carrier have reached 94%, and you have gained 2% of the Golden Law Affinity. Can this also gain legal affinity? Lear had no idea that he only led Ophelia to the priest's room, and it was the priest who really caused the mental harm to Ophelia. So even if the emotional fluctuations are caused indirectly, the Golden Fingers target can be achieved. If this is the case, there will be more room for maneuver. End of this chapter. Chapter 25. The story of Ophelia and the little boy. Back at the Duke's mansion, Lear has little magic left. The feeling of emptiness brought by the exhaustion of magic power made him so tired that he went back to his room to sleep. The next day, he was awakened by a scream. Turning his head dazedly, he felt something soft and gentle breaking free from his arms. When he opened his eyes, he saw Milia's blushing face. Lear woke up instantly, looked around, and then smiled. Good morning, my princess. Why are you in my bed? Milia grabbed the quilt, looking like a beauty in a painting. Lear shrugged his shoulders. He could guess the reason. Maybe he went to the wrong room when he came back last night. Who made their bedrooms next to each other? It should be normal for an unmarried couple to sleep in the same bed. He smiled, reached out and pulled Milia into his arms, feeling the softness of the girl's body. What are you going to do? You, be good. Lear grabbed Milia's struggling hand. Let me hold you for a while. Hearing this, Milia was stunned for a moment. It was the same domineering tone again, just like before. While imprisoned, Lear never took her feelings into consideration and forced her to do all kinds of shameful things, but now, with the same overbearing tone, she could hardly resist it. During the days she stayed in the Duke's mansion, Ino told her a lot about Lear, and she got to know Lear better. Anyway, her body had been examined thoroughly, and only the last step was left to be taken. Fortunately, she had begun to accept her identity as the mistress of Stuart. Moreover, Lear is powerful and handsome, and, at least in appearance, perfect as a husband. Milia gave up struggling and her body slowly relaxed. Feeling the changes in Milia's body, Lear's mouth curled up slightly, and he lowered his head to rub the girl's long hair. It turns out that it's not that difficult to win over a girl. Even though he had done something very excessive to Milia before, it would be easy for him to fall in love with her as long as he changed his attitude. Of course, The premise of all this is that you are strong enough and handsome enough. If it were in his previous life, he would be rich and handsome, and such a man would attract attention wherever he went. And the two stayed in the room for a long time until there was a knock on the bedroom door. "Your Highness, your breakfast." Eno pushed open the door and saw two people in ambiguous positions on the bed, and froze where he was. Soon, the little maid reacted. Her cheeks turned red, then she turned around quickly and slammed the door shut. While Lear and the little princess were developing their relationship, Ophaninia stayed up all night. The image of the priest and the little boy hugging each other kept echoing in her mind, and she tossed and turned in her bed. "Your Highness, I have already found out about Father Colin." According to the child's confession, Father Colin bought him from his parents for 1 silver coin. We also found other little boys in Father Colin's home. The little boy said that the priest would take someone to the cathedral every week for grace. Maury came to Ophaninia and read the information in his hand. He couldn't imagine that there would be such a person among the believers of the Golden Rule. "Not only did you bring the little boy home, but you also went on to wreak havoc in the sacred Golden Cathedral, changing the one every week. If this isn't blasphemy, what is even more disgusting than those pagans? So, the dirty priest does this once a week?" Ophania's tone became increasingly angry. "Yes, Your Highness the Saint." Maury nodded silently. He could feel that Ophania was now like a volcano that was about to erupt. "Your Highness, I really don't know anything about this." Seeing that the situation was not good, Bishop Gass stood up and clarified. Ophania turned her head and stared at the bishop in front of her. It was only after a long time that she suppressed the anger in her heart. She was really disappointed with the bishop in front of her. Not only did a blasphemer like Father Colin appear in the sacred cathedral, but he even failed to notice the intrusion of pagans. This was a serious dereliction of duty. "I hope you really don't know. If you and that priest are both blasphemers, I will purify you just like I purified the priest," Ophelia said coldly. The bishop's expression became a little stiff, and he could only nod awkwardly. "That's it, then. You go contact the royal family of Brayful. I've already told you the purpose of my coming here this time. The corrupt sect has fled here, and King Brayful is also a believer in the golden law of the Holy See. This cleanup mission requires the cooperation of the royal family." Ophania waved her hand and sent the bishop away. The bishop responded and retreated with a sense of relief watching the bishop's back as he left. Ophelia had already labeled him incompetent in her mind. If this bishop cannot demonstrate convincing achievements in the next campaign to clean up corrupt sects, she will need to consider whether a new bishop should be transferred from the imperial church. He cultivated his relationship with Milia in the morning, spent half a day in the study in the afternoon, and went out again in the evening. He didn't want to work, but the Golden Rule affinity he gained last night gave him an idea. Maybe he could get Ophelia's Golden Rule affinity just by sitting at home. Jingle bell. The bell on the door made a crisp sound. Lear pushed open the door of the newspaper office and walked in. "Excuse me, can I publish articles here?" Lear asked in a deep voice as he walked to the front desk of the newspaper. The newspaper employee raised his head and looked at the person in front of him with a strange expression. Although the climate in the royal city is about to enter winter, the person in front of him is still a little too dressed. He was wearing a coat, a top hat, a scarf, and even a pair of sunglasses, making it impossible to see his appearance at all. "Excuse me, can I publish an article here?" Seeing that the newspaper employee was looking at him without saying anything, Lear repeated it again. The newspaper staff finally reacted and stood up from their seats. "Sir, of course you can publish the article, but if you want to publish the article in our daily morning newspaper, you must review it. Can you show me the article first?" Lear nodded when he heard this and took out a stack of papers from his storage ring, which he had prepared long ago. Seeing Lear take out a piece of paper out of thin air, the staff's attitude changed. Those who can afford storage props are either rich or noble, usually aristocrats or professionals, and not ordinary aristocrats or professionals. He respectfully took the paper handed to him by Lear, and when he saw the title of the article, he couldn't help but be stunned. The title is Frowny Face: The Secret That Ophania Has to Tell. Turn to the next one. Frowny Face: The Story of the Heretic Nun Ophania and the Little Boy. The staff flipped through all the articles, and they were all stories about a nun named Ophania. From a heretical and corrupt sect, something like nuns like little boys, nuns like to use various punishments to torture civilians, and so on. This is the result of Lear's busy afternoon. How about it? Can it be published? Lear asked. "Sir, it can be published, but we're afraid we can't give you too much in royalties." The clerk looked at it carefully. "The writing style of these articles is pretty good. I think some people will like them if they are put in the novels section." Moreover, they are stories that expose heretical sects, so ZZQQ is very important. Well, and there are so many articles here that I'm afraid we can only pick out a few, the clerk added. Lear shook his head and took out 5 gold coins from his storage ring. I'll pay you 5 gold coins. I don't need your royalties. I hope these articles can spread throughout the royal city within 3 days. The employee was a little dumbfounded. It was the first time he heard that one could publish an article without any payment and had to pay for it out of his own pocket, and 5 gold coins? The newspaper's annual income is only this much. Sir, are you serious? The clerk took off his glasses and asked tremblingly. Of course. If you can spread these articles throughout the royal city within 3 days, these 5 gold coins will be yours. Lear nodded. Please be sure to give this task to us. The staff member excitedly shook Lear's hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 26, Hyde Milia, the Golden Saint was not well known in Breefield. Except for the high-ranking members of the law sect and some great nobles, almost no one knew the name of the saint. All I know is that in the Rhodes Empire, there is a saint at the headquarters of the Golden Church, and that's all. That was why Lear dared to go to the newspaper office with the evil novel with Ophanina as the protagonist. He was already looking forward to Ophelia's reaction the next time he saw her. It was already late when he returned home. After dinner, Lear sneaked into Miriam's room. Although Milia was a little shy, she had no choice but to let Lear hold her like a doll, silent all night. The next day, Lear was awakened by a series of urgent knocks on the door. Letting go of Milia, he walked to the door in a daze and opened it. When he saw the figure at the door, he instantly woke up. Elder sister? Seeing Avian, Lear subconsciously stood in front of the door, blocking Milia's face. It's already this late, and you're still sleeping? Avian said unhappily, not noticing Lear's abnormality. Outside the window, the sun is shining directly down. It is already noon. Lear raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect to sleep until this time. He glanced at Milia, who was still in bed. He always slept soundly when he held the little princess in his arms. Avian also took a look inside the room and saw a girl wrapped in a quilt on the bed with only her fair little feet exposed. She frowned and said, "You need to be more restrained. You and the princess have already been engaged. If your private life is so messy and the princess dislikes you in the future, it will be a loss of face for Stuart." Facing his sister's lecture, Lear shrugged. From Avian's angle, she couldn't see Milia's face. If Avian knew that the person lying on the bed was the princess, she would probably doubt her life. Nodding, Lear echoed Avian and said with a smile, "Yes, I know, dear sister. So what do you want to see me for?" Avian's cheeks turned red when she was addressed by Lear. She glared at Lear and took out a letter from her arms. This is the invitation that Her Majesty the Queen asked me to hand-deliver to you personally." Invitation? Lear took the letter from Avian. Yes, His Majesty the King plans to hold a banquet in 3 days and has invited many nobles. You have to go too. Avian nodded. Banquet? Is there something going on? Lear asked as he opened the letter. The letter was just an ordinary banquet invitation, and Lear didn't see anything unusual. I heard that a big shot has come from the Golden Church. It seems like something big is going to happen. Anyway, you should get ready. I will go with you in 3 days. Avian explained. The big shot of the Golden Church. Lear smiled. It seemed to be the saint. I understand. I will go. Is that the case? If there is nothing else, would you like to stay and have lunch before leaving? Lear closed the letter. Forget it, I still have work to do. I'll come to see you next time. Avian shook her head. The two exchanged a few pleasantries and Avian left. When Avian's back disappeared from his sight, Lear closed the bedroom door again. Milia had already woken up and looked at Lear with a slightly red face. What happened? His Majesty will hold a banquet in 2 days and invite me to attend. Lear waved the letter in his hand and was about to show it to Milia, but suddenly found that the handwriting on the letter had disappeared. Instead, a new line of text appears. Hide Milia. Lear's eyes fixed. What's wrong? Milia asked, tilting her head. It's okay, it's just a banquet. Maybe they want to issue some new decrees. Lear put away the letter in his hand calmly and smiled slightly. Time always passes quickly without us noticing, and 2 more days have passed. I in the study, Lear looked at the newspapers sent by the newspaper office and nodded with satisfaction. It must be said that the newspaper office was very quick. In less than 3 days, the collection of Ophelia's stories he wrote had been spread throughout the royal city. When he went shopping in the morning, he heard passers-by on the street talking about the story of the heretic nun named Ophanina. This nun is so hateful. Milia lay on the table, feeling a little indignant. Yes, nuns like this should go to hell. Lear echoed. Emilia turned her head and felt that Lear's tone was a little strange, but she didn't say much. Are you going to the party tonight? Milia suddenly asked. Yeah, but don't worry, I'll be back soon. Lear put down the newspaper in his hand. Milia bit her lip and nodded, but her expression was a little lost. Lear looked at the girl and knew why she was lost. She couldn't attend the party hosted by her father, she couldn't go out with her husband and could only stay at home alone, like a bird in a cage. The codeword on the Queen's invitation 2 days ago was probably that she was afraid that Milia's Morningstar law would be discovered by the bigwigs of the Golden Church. But was it necessary to be so cautious? Milia hasn't even awakened yet. If she is really discovered, then he, the leader of the blood cult, will be in greater danger. After comforting Milia for a while, Lear changed himself into a formal banquet dress. Then I'll be leaving. He said goodbye to Milia. Under the girl's gaze, he slowly walked out the door. Avian had been waiting in the hall for a long time, and her eyes lit up when she saw Lear. You are worthy of being my brother. You will make all the men jealous today. Sister, you have said this many times. Lear waved his hand. I'm telling the truth. Ivian snorted. Lear looked at the mirror beside him. The man in the mirror was tall and handsome. What Avian said was indeed right. He shrugged and took Avian's hand. When Lear and Avian arrived at the palace, there were already many carriages engraved with noble family crests parked at the door. They entered the banquet hall, and just as they walked through the door, they saw a girl in a dress pushing a wheelchair passing by. In the wheelchair was Eric. Seeing Lear, Eric's already gloomy face became even gloomier. Lear smiled at Eric. Are you laughing at me? Eric glared at Lear. Of course not. I would never laugh at a patient. Eric's eyes turned red with anger when he heard this, but he couldn't refute it. He could only direct his anger at the girl behind him. What are you still standing there for? Push me away, you filthy woman. The insults echoed in the hall. Many nobles passing by frowned, and Lear also frowned. He looked at the girl, who was quite beautiful and wearing a dress. He seemed to have some impression of her. Adele Norton, a name came to his mind. This was Eric's sister. How can you say that about your sister? Before Lear could say anything, Avian on the side angrily accused. What does what I think of a woman born to a lowly servant have to do with you? Eric did not hide his disgust for the girl. The girl stood there quietly, her expression unchanged. She nodded towards Avian as if to express her gratitude, then glanced at Lear. The two looked at each other, and inexplicably, a feeling of intimacy arose in Lear's heart. Just then, the system panel suddenly popped up. You have completed the second stage of the mission Blood's Revival and found the Blood followers in the royal city. You have obtained 5 experience points and the Blood Prisoner Mask. End of this chapter. Chapter 27. We are all heretics. Adele Norton is 18 years old. She was born in the Duke's house and is the younger sister of Eric Norton. Her mother was a maid in Norton House. She was favored by the Duke of Norton in her early years and gave birth to her, but she died during childbirth. She was beautiful, having inherited her mother's genes, and had long, slightly curly brown hair, completely different from Eric. Adele's childhood was not a happy one. She had a fat brother who always bullied her and a fat mistress who was very mean to her. Because her affinity with the arcane law was very low, it was difficult for her to achieve success as a mage, and her father, Duke Norton, did not treat her very well. He planned to send her away as a tool for marriage after she came of age. Last night, the Duke of Norton found Adele and asked her to attend a banquet. She couldn't refuse, and the Duke of Norton would always take her to banquets among the nobles. But this was not a father's love for his daughter, but just to find her a good husband, a husband who could bring her enough benefits. At this moment, Adele looked at Lear standing on the other side. There was no change on the surface, but she was a little excited in her heart. This was not the first time she had seen Lear. She had seen Lear at many previous banquets. He is still as handsome as before, but his previous cold temperament seems to have changed a little, becoming more elegant. This attracted her, and she was attracted to it from the first time she saw Lear. But Lear is the heir of the Stuart family, and his relationship with the Norton family is not good, and it can even be said that they are hostile to each other. She once fantasized about whether her father would reconcile with the Stuart family, and it would not be unacceptable for her to be given as a gift to Lear as his lover. Adele's cheeks flushed slightly at the thought, but soon calmed down. She shook her head in self-mockery. How could that be? In the duel at the Kingdom Arena, Lear brought disgrace to the Norton family. How could his father be willing to reconcile with Stuart, and Lear has the princess? Although Adele didn't know the princess very well, no girl would want to share her husband with others, even with her lover. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and leave. Eric urged again angrily. Adele woke up from her fantasy, became expressionless again, pushed Eric's wheelchair and turned away, looking at Adele's departing back. Lear's eyes became deep. He didn't expect to meet a believer of blood here, and she was Eric's sister. It was a little unbelievable. No wonder he searched for so long in the urban area and the slums and found nothing. It turned out that it was really the outer gods that the nobles communicated with themselves. However, there was one thing that seemed strange to Lear. He only saw one blood believer, but the mission was completed. Could it be that Adele was the only blood believer in the royal city? How long do you want to see? Avian stepped forward and patted Lear on the shoulder. You are not interested in the daughter of the Duke of Norton, are you? How could that be? I just feel a little sorry for her. Lear shrugged. She is indeed pitiful. I heard that she is not well received in the Duke of Norton's mansion. Avian looked at Adele's back with a hint of sympathy in her eyes. As women, even if we are on opposite sides, we still have a feeling of mutual understanding. The two of them didn't say anything more about Adele and walked deeper into the banquet hall, holding Avian's arm. Lear took the time to check the previous mission reward in the storage ring. Name, Blood Prisoner category, Legal Relics Introduction. The Blood Prisoner mask contains the original power of the blood law. Wearing it on your body can block all external perceptions. It can be transformed into any accessory. You can create a new identity composed of the blood law. This is limited to the blood law profession. This is a mask, or it would be more accurate to say a helmet, like the horned demon head in the legend. Continued, confused by the Queen's words, Lear asked in confusion, why? Do you know who today's party is for? The Golden Church? It's the Golden Saint. The Queen corrected Lear. What's the difference? The Golden Saint has the ability to detect heresy. Lear was stunned. The Saint had the ability to detect heresy? He really didn't know that. The Golden Saint possesses the power to detect the heretical laws of the outer gods. The Queen shook her head and continued, when I wrote the invitation letter to you, I didn't know it was the Golden Saint who was coming. I thought it was just an ordinary Golden Church bishop, so I only asked you to hide Milia and didn't tell you anything. Lear fell silent. If the Golden Saint could really detect the heretical laws, then he would be in danger now. After all, he had many kinds of heretical laws on his body, not only blood but also Morningstar. Moreover, the fact that the Queen could say such words also showed that the other party really knew that he had communicated with the outer gods. It was just speculation before, but now it can be confirmed. Do you know that I have communicated with the outer gods? Lear asked directly. Of course, I knew it when you dueled with Eric. The Queen smiled. The aura of heresy law in you is so strong that it seems to be overflowing. Lear's expression looked a little ugly, but then he thought of another question. He suddenly said, Queen, you and Milia should also be believers of the heretical law, right? Continued, Lear controlled it in his mind, and the original prisoner mask turned into a ring. He does have the ability to transform himself, and as for blocking the outside world's perception, Lear thinks it probably means that no one can detect his own information, and the ability to create a whole new identity, like creating a new character in a game. Lear thought to himself. He followed Avian calmly, took off the blood prisoner mask that had transformed into a ring from the storage ring, and put it on another finger. The two had already arrived at the center of the hall. The banquet had not yet begun. Just as Lear was about to sit down and study the new equipment, a waiter came up to Lear. Excuse me, is this Mr. Lear Stuart? Lear raised his head and looked at the waiter with some confusion. What can I do for you? Her Majesty the Queen wishes to see you, the waiter replied. Queen? Lear was stunned. On the side, Avian turned her head and looked at Lear after hearing the waiter's words, as if she wanted to ask if he had gotten into trouble again. Lear reacted and guessed that it might be the secret message in the letter. He stood up and said to the waiter, Take me there. Following the waiter, they soon arrived at a compartment. He went into the room and the waiter stayed outside, closing the door. In the room, Queen Philia was sitting on a chair. Seeing Lear, she sighed, You shouldn't be here. End of the chapter. Hearing this, the Queen was a little surprised. Milia told you what I said to her? No, I guessed. Lear laughed. Your Majesty, since we are all heretics, aren't you afraid of being discovered by the saint? As if she understood Lear's thoughts, the Queen shook her head and said, We are different. I only have the affinity of the law, but you and Milia both have the essence of the law. For me, as long as the Golden Saint does not actively investigate me, she will not find out, the Queen said, and suddenly her tone slowed down. She frowned. Wait, why did the aura of heresy law disappear from you? What do you mean? Lear asked in confusion. I can no longer sense the aura of heresy and law that originally emanated from you. What did you do? The queen stared at Lear closely, as if she had discovered something incredible. Lear was stunned for a moment, and suddenly thought of the blood on his hands. End of this chapter. Chapter 28. Why does this name sound so familiar? After staying in the compartment for more than 10 minutes, Lear was driven up by the queen. The queen wanted to know why the aura of heresy and lawlessness in him had disappeared, but Lear didn't tell her, which made the queen very unhappy. Lear glanced at the closed door of the compartment and thought of the queen's frustrated look just now, and he felt in a good mood. It turns out that the dignified queen can also be angry, just like when Maria is angry, but more mature and more charming. He lowered his head to glance at the bloody prisoner mask in his hand. The shielding effect of the bloody prisoner mask could actually cover up the aura of law emanating from his body. Now he didn't have to worry about the saint. I really have to thank the Lord of Blood for his gift. Lear praised in his heart. Returning to the banquet, he was about to go back to Avian, but found the atmosphere a little subtle. At a dining table not far away, a young girl was sitting on the ground, holding her left arm with her right hand. Her forehead was a little red and swollen, and there were scattered glass fragments on the ground. It's Adele. What happened? Lear walked up to Avian and asked, You're back? Seeing Lear, Avian's eyes lit up. Hearing Lear's question, she became angry again. Just now, Earl Bauer's son tried to make a move on Adele, and when he was rejected, he even hit her. Lear turned his head and looked in Adele's direction again. A pockmarked young nobleman was looking down at Adele with a lustful gleam in his eyes. Adele, I have asked my father to propose to the Duke of Norton. You can't escape. You will have to marry me soon, said the young man. Lear had an impression of this man. He was Eric's follower, named Fedor Bauer. Eric sat in a wheelchair nearby, watching the scene coldly, not caring at all about Fedor's behavior towards his sister. The nobles around stopped talking and looked at this scene with different expressions. The banquet has not started yet. Those who have arrived here in advance are young descendants of nobles. The nobles with real titles will arrive later. Some young nobles were disgusted by Fedor's behavior, while others wanted to watch the show, but no one stepped forward to stop him. Lear frowned. This was Eric's family affair and he shouldn't interfere. But Adele was a believer of blood and also his subordinate. How could he just watch her being humiliated? Fedor walked towards Adele step by step, looking at the girl's exposed skin greedily. He stretched out his hand and actually intended to tear off Adele's clothes in such a situation. The male nobles around were all excited. On the surface, these nobles were very gentlemanly, but no one knew how decadent their lives were in private. Many nobles have a special exhibitionism habit. They had no intention of stopping Fedor's behavior. Avian raised her eyebrows when she saw this scene. These nobles didn't care, but she couldn't bear to see such a scene. Just as she was about to stop Fedor, Lear stepped forward. A strong hand grabbed Fedor's arm that was reaching out to Adele. Before Fedor could react, he felt dizzy and flew out. I am really ashamed of your behavior. It seems that Earl Bauer has never taught you how to respect others. A cold voice rang out in the hall, and the originally tense atmosphere was like a bucket of cold water suddenly poured on it. Everyone fell silent. Everyone looked at Lear standing in front of Adele. They all knew him. This is the most famous person in the royal city in recent times. He is also the legendary dual law professional and the heir of Stuart. Which bastard is it? Fedor was furious after being thrown out. When he wanted to see who it was, he saw Lear's cold eyes. Lear, what are you doing? Eric on the side reacted and shouted angrily, What? Lear smiled. I just helped you do what you should do. You don't need to thank me. After all, I injured you in a duel not long ago, making it impossible for you to help your sister. He added with a hint of sarcasm in his tone. Lear's words caused some of the nobles who were watching to laugh. They knew that Adele was Eric's sister and had witnessed the duel before. Eric gritted his teeth at the laughter around him. Fedor climbed up from a distance, came to Eric, and looked at Lear with some fear. Without paying any more attention to the two clowns, Lear reached out and helped Adele up. Looking at the girl who had remained calm until now, he frowned and said, Don't you care at all when others humiliate you like this? He knew very well that the girl in front of him was a believer in blood, and it should not be difficult to deal with Fedor, who was not even a professional, but the girl just endured it silently. Adele was silent. This was the first time she was so close to Lear. When she heard what he said, her eyes trembled slightly. Of course she cared, but what could she do? She has power, but it comes from heretical laws that are not tolerated by gold. If she took action, she would probably be judged by the Golden Church, so she had been enduring it, but it has reached its limit. If Fedor really pushes the limit, she will be doomed. Fortunately, Lear stood up like a hero. Seeing that Adele didn't say anything, Lear raised his eyebrows. Thinking of the other party's identity as a blood believer, he seemed to understand why the other party had been enduring. Adele must be very troubled. She is not welcome in the Norton family and has heretical laws. She can only hide herself from being discovered and suffers bullying. Then one day she can no longer bear it, exposes the power of blood, and is judged by the Holy Golden Church. This is her ending. Lear had never heard of this character in his previous life in the game. Maybe she was purified by the Golden Saint at this banquet. This is the tragedy of heretical legal professionals, like rats that cannot stand the light. Sighing, Lear moved closer to Adele's body and whispered in the girl's ear, "Let's talk after the banquet is over. I know that you have the power of blood." When Adele heard Lear's words, her body immediately stiffened and her expression became nervous. "Don't worry, I won't tell this secret to anyone else," Lear added. Adele looked at Lear's calm face and her mind began to wander. Why did Lear know his secret? What does he mean by this? Is he threatening me to do something bad? The girl's heart was pounding. Lear had already walked away, and the nobles around her withdrew their gazes that had been watching the show. They pretended to be solemn. This time, the great nobles began to enter one after another, including the Duke of Norton, Earl Bauer, the Dean of the Arcade Academy, Elvin Bane, and his daughter, Tivany Bane. Adele's affairs were not noticed by these nobles. Fedor hid far away, and Eric was tactful enough not to bother with Lear anymore, but just glared at Adele fiercely. At the back of the hall, King Rosser came out with the queen. Beside them stood a beautiful woman with blonde hair and golden eyes. Behind them were the bishops of the Golden Church. All the nobles were attracted to this woman, who was so different from their female companions. Who is this woman who can stand with the king and queen and is so beautiful? The nobles whispered. The king came to the center of the hall, glanced at the nobles around him, signaled for silence, and then said loudly, "Thank you all for coming to this banquet. The main reason I asked you to come here this time is to introduce you to a lady." The king looked at the blonde woman beside him. The woman nodded, stepped forward, and said to the nobles around her, "I am the saint of the Golden Church, Athanina Adrian." The saint of the Golden Church. Everyone was shocked. Athanina Adrian. Wait, why does this name sound so familiar? Athanina smiled at the nobles, very beautiful and holy, but many of the nobles below showed strange expressions. End of this chapter. Chapter 29, Your Highness the Saint, do you really like little boys? Athanina looked at the nobles below. As a high-level professional, her perception was very strong, and she keenly felt that there was something wrong with the way these nobles looked at her. There were some lustful looks among them, but she didn't care. She knew what kind of attraction she had to men, which was normal, but lustful looks only accounted for a small part. Most of them were an indescribable feeling. Athanina, isn't this the name of that heretical nun? Suddenly, a voice was heard from the crowd. Everyone looked over and saw Fedor looking at the saint with astonishment. Lear almost laughed out loud when he heard the cry. What an idiot who is not afraid of death. A normal person would understand that this is a slander against the saint of the Vatican after hearing the name Athanina and thinking about the collection of stories he wrote, but Fedor is obviously not normal, or in other words, not a smart person. The banquet hall fell silent, and Athanina was somewhat stunned. She was a saint of the Holy See, so how could she be associated with a heretical nun? Mori, who was standing behind Athanina, became angry immediately. The saint had always been sacred in his heart. Now someone put the saint and the heretic together. How could he tolerate this? He immediately shouted, "Damn blasphemer, you actually slandered the great saint." The loud shout startled Fedor, and he didn't understand why the other party had such a big reaction. Many nobles who knew the situation showed strange smiles. King Rosser walked up to Fedor and asked in a deep voice, "Kid, what on earth are you talking about? Ms. Athanina is the saint of the Holy See. If you slander the saint and defame the Golden Holy See, God will judge you." "Your Majesty, Fedor must have been wrong. How could Her Royal Highness be a heretic? It is not an easy task to slander the saint and defame the Golden Church. If things go wrong, it will be put on the church's trial list, and then the entire Ball family will be implicated." Rebellious son. What nonsense are you talking about? Why don't you apologize to Her Highness the Saint? Earl Bauer said sternly. Fedor finally reacted and realized the seriousness of the situation. He knelt down in panic. Lady Saint, I was just talking nonsense. You are the saint, and everything is my fault. Please forgive me. Afanina looked at Fedor, who was kneeling down, and frowned. She did not comment on Fedor's words. She was more interested in why Fedor said that she was a heretic nun. Tell me why you say I am a heretic nun. Fedor looked up, hesitating whether to speak out. He always felt that something bad would happen if he told the truth. I want to hear the truth. If you lie to me, I will judge you in accordance with the golden law. As if she saw Fedor's hesitation, Afanina said coldly. Fedor gritted his teeth and said, Your Highness, I read the story about the heretic nun Afanina in the newspaper. Newspaper? Yes. Fedor simply took out the newspaper with the heretic nun in it from his storage ring and handed it to Afanina. Afanina was a little puzzled. She took the newspaper and saw the headline frowny face, the story of the heretic nun Afanina and the little boy. Afanina narrowed her eyes and looked down little by little. The banquet hall became silent and no one dared to speak. A strong sense of oppression enveloped everyone's heart. It was a long time before Afanina finished reading the article, and her hands holding the newspaper trembled slightly. This article actually portrayed her as a nun from a heretical sect who liked to torture little boys. The writing was very explicit, with bondage, wax dripping, and all kinds of pornographic plots that she had never even heard of. She turned to the next page. The evil fetish of the perverted nun Afanina, the secrets that Afanina and the 7 little boys have to tell. Looking at these titles, she could already imagine how disgusting the words were before she even read the content. She took a deep breath, suppressed the shame and anger in her heart, and pretended to be calm and asked, Where did this newspaper come from? Seeing that Afanina had no expression on her face, Fedor thought that the saint had let him go. He got up from the ground and said, This is the daily morning newspaper of the royal city. It is available every morning and can be bought in almost the entire royal city. And the story of the heretic nun has been published for 3 issues, with several articles in each issue. Hearing Fedor's words, Afanina's delicate body trembled slightly. How could such a newspaper be bought everywhere in the royal city? And it has already been published for 3 issues? And each issue has several stories. Doesn't that mean that the reputation of my heretical nun has spread throughout the royal city? Which damn pagan dared to slander her like this? Ophelia felt angry and aggrieved. Lear stood in the crowd, looking at the saint in the center with amusement. The prompts of the golden finger kept jumping in front of his eyes. In just a short while, his affinity with the golden law increased by 0.8%. The amplitude of each jump is not too large, which shows that Ophelia's psychological quality is still good. Your Highness, is this written about you? Do you really like little boys? Maybe he wasn't thinking straight, Fedor asked curiously when he saw Afanina was silent. All the nobles who had read the collection of stories about Afanina looked at Fedor as if he were a fool. Did this guy want to die? This sentence seemed to ignite the fuse of the explosive barrel. Afanina was so angry that she was shaking all over. The terrifying golden magic directly blew Fedor away. How could I do such a shameless thing? Afanina roared in grief and anger, and tears were flashing in her eyes. My reputation is ruined just like that. Don't let me know which bastard did it, otherwise, she will make the other party taste the bondage and wax dripping in the article. The golden rule source material carriers shame, anger, and grievance emotional fluctuation values have reached 97%, and you have gained 3% of the golden rule affinity. The golden finger popped up again, and this time it directly increased by 3%. Lear was slightly shocked. It seemed that the saint was really broken. Looking at Ophelia with tears in her eyes, he did not soften his heart. The saint was the pioneer who would lead the Golden Church to destroy the Stuart family in the future. The old Duke of Stuart died at her hands. Fedor spun several times in the air and finally fell heavily against the wall of the hall. He vomited blood and fainted. Seeing this, Count Bauer did not dare to look at Fedor's injuries. He now regretted why he did not shoot Fedor against the wall, giving birth to such an outspoken bastard. The atmosphere of the banquet became a little subtle. Ophelia could no longer stay and left the hall with a wave of her sleeves. The king felt a little embarrassed when he saw this. He also saw the content in the newspaper, which was indeed a bit disgusting. He coughed lightly and suddenly said seriously, Well, Her Excellency the Saint is feeling unwell and has left early. I will explain the key points of today's banquet. The heretical and corrupt sects have infiltrated the royal city. Your Excellency, the Saint has come here to eradicate the corrupt sections. I hope you can use the power of your family to pay attention to the recent situation in the royal city. I will need your help when necessary. The corrupt sect is a heretical sect that is not tolerated by the Golden Rule. I hope you can take it seriously. End of this chapter. Chapter 30. I think you are pretty cute at banquets and aristocratic circles. The main themes are always fun and socializing. After the king finished speaking about the main point of the banquet, the real entertainment began. Female nobles would find men they liked, and if they got along well, the two would spend a wonderful night together, even if both of them had their own families. There are also more open-minded banquet hosts who will turn the dinner into a large-scale decadent party. Those who want to participate will stay, and those who don't want to participate will leave early. But today's banquet obviously won't develop into that. After all, it is hosted by the king. Looking at the beautiful figures around him, Lear felt a little embarrassed. As a recent celebrity, he was naturally very popular. In addition, he had just rescued Adele, which made him favored by many women. Already, some beautiful lady has hinted that she would like to spend a wonderful evening with him. Ivian was staring at him intently, looking at Lear as if to say, if you dare to mess around, don't blame me for being rude. Lear shook his head and his eyes fell on Adele, who was alone not far away. There was no one around the girl, as if she was isolated. He raised his eyebrows, and a bright red light flashed in his eyes. Go wait for me outside the banquet hall and don't attract other people's attention. Adele was eating the food at the dinner party boredly, when suddenly a voice sounded in her heart. She was startled and looked up to see Lear nodding at her not far away. That young master of the Stuart family could actually speak directly to her heart. Adele was shocked by Lear's mysteriousness. After thinking for a few seconds, she put down the wineglass in her hand and left the banquet hall quietly. As a disseminator of blood, Lear can control and restrict other believers of the blood law. It was not difficult for him to speak into the other party's mind, just like a god sending down an oracle. Seeing Adele leave, he drank the wine in his glass and stood up. I'm going to the bathroom, he said to Avian. Ivian was a little suspicious when she heard that, but she felt relieved when she saw that no woman followed him. She didn't want her handsome brother to get involved with these indecent women. When he arrived outside the hall, at the end of the corridor, Lear saw Adele and walked straight over. Thank you for saving me just now, Mr. Lear. Seeing Lear coming over, Adele smiled and grabbed the hem of her skirt nervously. Lear smiled and said, don't thank me. I just don't like Fedor. The two of them only exchanged 2 sentences, and then fell silent. Adele didn't know what to say, and asked, why do you know that you have the power of blood? Lear looked at the bewildered girl and found her cute. He broke the silence and said, would it be convenient for you to go to the cubicle and talk with me? What we are going to say cannot be heard by others, right? Adele blinked. Go to the cubicle? Just the two of them. She knew what the partitions in the banquet hall were used for. That was a place for passionate men and women to release their love. Could it be that Lear knew my secret and wanted to threaten me to do something bad in the cubicle? Adele's cheeks turned slightly red. Let's go, let's have a good talk about the blood. Lear didn't notice Adele's abnormality, said another sentence, and walked towards an empty compartment. Adele came to her senses, hesitated for a few seconds, and then followed obediently. Arriving in the compartment, Lear locked the door. Adele sat on the sofa, feeling a little uneasy. If Lear really had evil thoughts about her, she didn't know what to do. She had admired Lear and thought about being his lover, but she was still a little shy to actually put it into practice. After all, she was still a girl. Don't be too nervous. I won't do anything excessive to you. I just want to ask you some questions. Lear sat down on another sofa, and after thinking for a while, he began to question, how did you communicate with the blood law? A quarter of an hour later, Adele told Lear everything without hiding anything. She had been a believer of blood for only 3 years. She discovered the ritual of the blood law in the family's collection of books and communicated with the Lord of Blood by accident. Not long ago, she broke through to the level of an entry-level blood hunter. Lear thought silently. Through his own perception of Adele's blood law essence, he knew that she was not lying. You mean, you became a believer of blood by accident? Do you know that there are other believers of blood in the royal city? Lear asked. Adele shook her head. I've been staying at home the whole time. I haven't been out much, and I haven't come into contact with professionals outside. In other words, apart from himself and the maid in his house, Adele is probably the only believer in the blood law in the royal city. No wonder the second ring of tasks was completed in no time. Lear was speechless. It seemed that the Lord of Blood origin was too shabby to say that. As a great outer god, he didn't even have many believers. There was a brief silence in the compartment. Seeing Lear remain silent, Adele couldn't help but ask, "Well, I've told you all these things. What are you going to do with me? Will you hand me over to the Golden Church?" "Why should I hand you over to the Golden Church?" Lear raised his head and asked back. "What I possess are heretical laws, which are not tolerated by the Golden Church." Adele replied with some sadness. "So? What does it have to do with me whether the Golden Church can tolerate it?" Lear smiled. He could understand how frightened the girl in front of him was during the 3 years when she came into contact with the blood law. He gently stroked the girl's hair. "I am not a believer in gold. I don't need to abide by the law of gold. Besides," Lear paused for a moment. Originally, he planned to tell Adele that he also possessed the blood law and make her his subordinate, but after thinking about it, he rejected this idea. After all, he didn't know Adele very well, and she was the daughter of the Duke of Norton. Although the blood law essence can restrain other blood believers, it is not completely safe. After all, of the fewer people who know his secret, the safer he was. "And what?" Adele asked, hearing Lear mid-sentence. "Besides, I think you are quite cute. It would be a waste to give you to the Golden Church." Lear cleverly made up an excuse. Adele was stunned for a moment, and her cheeks turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Any girl would be happy to be praised by the person she admires. After being shy for a while, she whispered, "So, are you going to let me go?" Lear turned his head and looked at the timid girl. He smiled and said, "Of course, no." When the two came out of the cubicle, Adele felt relieved but also a little disappointed. She was relieved because Lear did not make things difficult for her. He just asked her to go undercover in the Duke of Norton's mansion to gather information, and the loss was also because Lear did not make things difficult for her. Not only did Lear not do anything bad to her, he didn't even touch her. "Don't I have any charm?" Adele felt indignant for no reason and her cheeks turned red. Lear didn't know what the girl was thinking, and his opinion of Adele was simple. A beginner blood professional, and a delicate girl who has rarely fought, she can't play a big role. Even if she is recruited, so it is better to let her stay. Continue with the character of the pitiful, unpopular Eric's sister. You can also find out about the actions of Duke Norton. The two came out of the compartment and prepared to return to the banquet hall. At this moment, an angry voice suddenly sounded behind the two of them. "Adele! What are you doing? Why are you with Lear?" Eric looked at the two people coming out of the cubicle with a look of shock and anger. There was an abnormal blush on his sister's face. What is this doing? His enemy took his sister away. End of this chapter.